Hello and welcome back to the Beautiful Things channel. Today I thought I would do something a little bit different, but something that is going round in the sewing community, and that I was actually involved in getting set up. I've just been a little bit slow in getting my video created. Sorry. Today I'm going to be answering the So Many Questions tag. Now the So Many Questions tag came about as part of a group of vloggers, sewing vloggers or sewing YouTubers, shall we say, who got together on Facebook and created a Facebook support group. It's called the Sewing Vloggers Support Group. I've been a member of it since it was first set up. It's a really useful place actually if you've got any technical questions. So it's not for sharing your videos, it's not for talking about sewing either. It is purely talking about technical stuff. So, you know, what YouTube lets you upload, how you go about monetizing your channel, why did my video get taken down because it has music in it that I shouldn't use, etc, etc. But it just so happens that all of us in the group are all sewists and we all vlog and make videos about sewing. So, there were two members of the group, names you might have heard, people you might follow. JJ from Camden Stitch and Laura from A Specky Seamstress. Both of them decided to get together and come up with a list of questions that could be asked, and we could do a tag video, and it's quite simply called So Many Questions. Now there are actually 40 questions altogether. I'm not going to do 40, don't worry, but we were asked as members of the group what questions we thought people would find interesting, and we all submitted our questions. So a few of them are mine. I don't actually remember which ones I submitted now, if I'm honest, but I have picked 10 to answer for you today. So I'm going to start with number one, which is how and when did you get into sewing? I started sewing back when I had just had my little boy, who is now just turned 12. So I was probably pregnant with him, so let's say 13 years ago. But I certainly wasn't dressmaking at that point. In fact, my mum bought me my first sewing machine, which was a John Lewis mini sewing machine, so that I could sew on card. I was a big card maker back in the day, and it was very fashionable to put a zigzag stitch all the way around the outside edge of your greetings cards, and so that's why I wanted a sewing machine. It was only when it got given to me for Christmas that I realised that I could actually make other things on it, and started to experiment with bunting and bags and lavender bags and little bits and pieces. I then went on to making small items to sell at craft fairs for many, many years before eventually going down the teaching route and then getting into dressmaking, and the rest is history basically. Here I am. Question number two is how much time do you spend sewing? Now this really depends on a huge number of factors. It depends how busy I am here in the studio with work, whether I'm teaching or not, whether it's a day like today, for instance, where I've had a couple of clients in that just needed a little bit of support. So that's actually meant that I've been able to do some cutting out and some prep and things like that, which means that one day next week I might actually have a day where I can go, I'm going to do some sewing. The trick to me getting sewing time though is in the preparation. If I don't prep and cut out and get all of the bits done so that there I can literally sit down and just sew them together, nothing ever happens. I get small bite-sized chunks of time, so I need to know that I can reach for something and do it. So today, for instance, I've prepped 3 projects: a kilo wrap dress, which I've got cut out, another ruffly sleeved vest top, which I got cut out with the scraps from the kilo dress, and I've also cut out some fabric for a tutorial that I want to do for you guys. All 3 of those projects are cut out and good to go, which means when I have sewing time, I can just grab one and go. So it's a really hard question to answer. Sometimes I can have 3 or 4 days a week to sew. Sometimes I can have 1 day a week to sew. Sometimes I can have an hour a week to sew. I can't answer that question. What with having 2 small children and a family to manage, as well as my own business, sewing time is limited. Question 3 is planner or improviser. I have to say I am 50-50. I love to wing it. I really like to get an idea in my head, grab some fabric, grab some haberdashery and see what happens. But sometimes I can get frustrated if it doesn't work out quite how I wanted it to, and so therefore on those occasions it's nice just to be able to follow a pattern, in which case I'm a planner. So I will get my pattern, I will get all my haberdashery, I will get my fabric, everything prepared, and I work through the instructions step by step by step until I have something finished. I'm probably more of a planner on the being organised side of things though. I do have a long list of videos I want to record for you. I have a long list of things I want to make. I have a long list of ideas, and so I suppose in that respect I'm always planning my next make. Question number 4 is, what sewing machine do you use and own? So I use most of the time the machines here at the studio, and we have our machines on hire from Janome, and they are the CXL 301 computerized models. When I'm at home though, I treated myself to a DKS 100 special edition. It's a Janome model and it's really lovely. It's the one that Tilly in the Buttons uses on all of her courses and all of her advertising and all of her photos. It's got that lovely tealy blue square on it, and I have to admit that that was a big factor because my sewing room is grey and teal. But it's a lovely machine. But if I'm honest, you're paying a couple of £100 more than you would for something like the CXL 301. And actually the only additional feature that I use on that machine is my cut button. But I do love it. I think it's worth £200. Question number 5 is, most disastrous make or moment. For me, hands down, it has to be the walkaway dress. That pattern first came to light on the Great British Sewing Bee a few seasons ago. I can't remember which one, but it was an absolute disaster. They all made it fairly well on the actual programme because they all made one size to fit a mannequin. Trying to get it to fit a real person, impossible. I don't know anybody who successfully made a walkaway dress without making massive alterations, and it was the worst thing I have ever made. If I can dig out the blog post that I wrote about it, I'll link it down below in the description, because awful. And over time, the comments on that blog post are actually really quite interesting. I don't think I was alone in that being my disastrous sewing moment. Number 6, I'm going to read this one. What's the one piece of advice you would give yourself if you could go back to when you first started sewing? My mum's going to laugh at this one. Read the instructions. It's really easy, especially when you've been doing something for a long while, to think that you know best. And actually, the instructions are normally written for a reason. They may not always be great. And sometimes I've sewn something and I followed the instructions and I've thought, actually, that didn't work. I'm going to do it a different way. And that's all well and good. But many times I've picked up a pattern or I've looked at something and thought, oh, I can do that. I don't need the instructions. And I've whizzed on through, missed out a crucial step and ended up having to unpick the whole thing. So read the instructions. Take it slowly, step by step, and do as you're told. Number 7 is, who taught you to sew? Me. Me and me only. Me and books, me and the internet, me and practice. I am 100% self-taught. I've taken 2 sewing classes in my entire career. One of those was with an upholstery teacher who taught me how to teach Roman blind classes, and the other one would be my Learn to Love Your Overlocker course that I did at my local adult college, which was one of the best courses I've taken in my life. I will link my video about that up here. I am due to take another course this weekend, which I'm really excited about. I'm doing the 3-day Ginger Jeans class with Charlotte Newland. She's coming here to the studio, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to be a pupil and I'm going to be considering it as a little bit of continuous professional development. But yes, I can hands down say I am self-taught. Nobody really has taught me to sew. Question 8 is most favourite and least favourite sewing task. Least favourite has to be sticking together PDF patterns. I hate them. I will do anything to avoid it. So if I get a copy shop pattern, brilliant, it will be sent off to net printer. And if I don't, then, well, if there's no copy shop available, I have to be pretty desperate to want to make the item to stick it together. Favourites? I really like gathering. Is that sad? I know some people really hate it, but I find it really enjoyable. Just slowly easing that fabric, easing out the gathers, popping in the pins. I find it really, really therapeutic. And when I've sewn it and it all looks beautiful, I'm just like, oh, look at that. And I get the same kick out of setting in sleeves. And that's another one that people absolutely love or hate. It's a real Marmite task. Question number 9 is, how has your style changed since starting sewing? Well, I think for me, it's more about my fabric choices rather than my style. So obviously when I first started, I would make bunting, purses, bags, lavender bags, things like that, little items. I still like to sew all of those things now, and I like to come up with new ideas to teach in my classes. But definitely my fabric choices have changed. When I first started sewing, I was really vintagey. I used to love a really traditional Cath Kidston style kind of fabric, or I would use vintage fabrics and retro fabrics, you know, your ditzy florals or your swirly retro prints. And now I just go for the brightest, funkiest fabrics that I can find. Totally different. I don't do anything vintagey or twee or granny chic, as I think it was called back then. No, I mean, for instance, sitting in front of me right now is this bag, and I've used this fantastic cacti print. I made, what did I make today? One sec. I made this little zippy pouch today with an elastic band on the back, and again, it's, you know, it's really bright, it's really funky, it's floral, it's got flamingos on it. So yeah, I think really my style hasn't changed, but my fabric choices definitely have. And possibly as well, when I first started out dressmaking, I would go for the vintage style tea dresses, so over at Betty Dress, that kind of thing. And now I am so much more into sewing with knits. I've got on today, I've got a knit dress on, scuba dress, so a little wiggle dress. So yeah, I suppose my style has changed in that I don't tend to make as many woven big frocks anymore. It is much more practical things that I'm going to wear on a day-to-day basis, and I do so a lot more with knits than wovens. The last question is favourite fashion designer. Do you know what? I don't think I have a fashion designer. I'm not particularly into designer clothes, but I do have 2 favourite high street fashion stores where I know I can always buy clothes that will fit me really, really nicely and that are just a little bit different from absolutely everywhere else. So for real high street, it has to be Oasis. They're one of the only places I can get things to fit me that fit nicely up top and down the bottom. And for a little bit more luxury and a little bit sort of, you know, posh night out, I love Phase 8. Again, it's another shop where all of their garments seem to fit me really nicely. And both of these companies tend to use really nice knit fabrics or drapey fabrics that are kind of crepey and that just don't crease. You can screw up their garments and shove them in a suitcase, and when you get to the other side of wherever you're going, you can hang them up and there are no creases in them whatsoever. So they just hang nicely, which again, they don't cling to all your lumps and bumps. They're just lovely. In fact, I'm going to do another video really soon and talk you through some of my high street buys, and I'm going to include some of my Oasis and Phase 8 bits and bobs because I love shopping, but I can find shopping really frustrating. So when I do go, I tend to go to a small handful of shops where I know I'm going to find something that's going to fit really nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was a little bit different. If you did, then search up the hashtag. I will put all the details down below of all of the people taking part, everybody that came up with the questions, and all you've got to do in the YouTube search box is just put hashtag so many questions, and so being SEW. I'll run it on the bottom for you, and you'll be able to see everyone else who's done this tag too. And if you want to do the video, please do. I'd be really interested to see your answers. And there are so many questions that even if you only sew occasionally or just a little bit here and there, there'll be a question for you. As an example, some of the ones at the bottom aren't even sewing related. Heels or flats, ice lolly or ice cream, Paris or New York, gym bunny or couch potato, current box set, tea or coffee. Anyone could do that. So if you don't sew very much, don't be put off by trying it. It's a really good video, and it's really nice for everyone to come together as a community and post their answers. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I look forward to chatting to you in the comments. Please do remember to give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I put content up here 5 days a week. Have a lovely day. I will see you all again soon.